out to my old friend, family friend, and very close to my parents, the translator of the wonderful book of poetry, to be here for her with us today, with her family, is enriching. And more than that, I think it inspires all of us at some stage to write. And nothing more than poetry as a genre is at once so domestic, so much a part of ourselves as well as the world. So it's again the global and the local coming together in a wonderful fusion. Generationally as well, this book I think spans over 100 years of two generations, and then passing it on to the next set of wonderful women that we have here, represented very amply, I would say. And what interests me personally in my scholarship is that I find the polymath we have in Shalini speaks to both my compatriots and colleagues at the Rising Asia Literary Circle, because we all, I think now, span many parts of the globe with children in other places, and we live across oceans. And the interesting part of the word translation is the prefix trans. There was once a wonderful academic, when I was, I think, in my second year in college. She was Meenakshi Mukherjee. And she explained translation beautifully. She said it is not just a representation like a mirror, but it is bhashantar. It's traveling from one culture, one mindset, one to the other. So Shalini, in fact, holds her own self and the world of her mother within her. It's a formidable job to share that. Lata Pada, whom I often invoke in my asides when I talk about literature, is one person I want to share a line from her poetry. She's the woman, if you remember, 1984, when the Air India tragedy happened, and we had a bombing of the plane from Toronto to, it was supposed to come to Bombay. She is actually an order of the British Empire now in Canada. And she was on a practicing mission of a student's Arangetram, the Bharatanatyam exponent, in Canada. And the phone rang. And in the phone came the voice that her husband, Vishnu Pada, and the two daughters, who were her exponents as well of Bharatanatyam, had crashed at Cork in Ireland and had died. And after that she wrote a poem, and one of the lines I never forget and came back to me again and again was, "All our mothers align through me." So if you think of Shalini's mum, Shanta Sinha, you can't stop there. You're thinking of the generations of women who are formidable, strong, and left their mark indelibly through their poetry. So if we might at that point gesture towards our translator and to Anju Munshi and Anasuya Pal, who I said have kept this flame of our passion for literature alive. Shall we take a picture of the lounge? Come, please stand up. You can take the book and tear open the pretty packing. This is the moment, Shalini. Enjoy it.
Thank you so much.
So welcome.
Literally, I have to tell you.
So there we are. Beautifully produced. I love the web design. And it represents, I think, the darker side and the lighter side of the human psyche. So, I am particularly thrilled because it adds so much panache to poetry in the city, and I am so grateful that you've given us this opportunity at Rising Asia to do this for you.
Thank you so much. And thank you just so much.
Now it's your turn to say a few words, and we will sit down, and then we will have a conversation.
Yes.
Is that okay?
As before I begin any program or any moment in my life, it's not without my Guruji. He is not today present physically, but I know his aura pervades, so he's very much here. And I begin this evening as an offering at his divine lotus feet. And a small little prayer of invocation before we begin this evening's program. Shantam Padmasanastam Shashidhara Mukudam Panchavaktram Trinetram Om Jitam Te Pundarikaksha Namaste Vishwabhavana Shri Gurubhyom Namaste Stu Namaha Purusha Purvajam Om Shri Gurudevaya Namah Om. I first want to begin this evening again after the invocation of my Guruji. My deepest and heartfelt gratitude to Julie for giving me this opportunity to come here and be with all of you, and also to Anasuya and to Anshu and all the wonderful people, all the luminaries who are here. So my gratitude to them. And it's for me a moment which is beyond precious, because it's a tribute to my mother, who was an acclaimed writer, Shanta Sinha of her times. That's one. And my family is here, my 4 children who are my life. And for me, the most wonderful, wonderful part is my grandchildren are here too, some of them. And I know that the others are all there in my mind and in my heart. So it's a very momentous evening for me. And I am really, really, truly overwhelmed, to say the least. And I think very emotional at that too. So it's almost impossible to speak. But what can I say? This opportunity to speak about my mother, who for me was a person who was just a mother to me. And we grew up with both my parents who were writers. My father wrote in English, mother wrote in Hindi. They were both acclaimed writers of their times. And we grew up with many of the luminaries like Dinkar, Panishwarnath, Renu, Dharamveer Bharati, and all these great poets and writers, even Kaifi Azmi at the writers' workshop which he had conducted, my father. But for me, it was a child's play. I grew up. It was nothing extraordinary to speak about. But later on, as time progressed, and I think I read her poems, and Mother was facilitated many, many years ago. In fact, a few, I would say a few years back, by IAM Patna Center. So that's a literary organization. And from there, the seed to actually to republish her book, Samanantar Sune, which was a book which was a very highly acclaimed book and a pretty controversial book of its times because of my mother's imagery, the way she wrote. And from there, I met this wonderful writer, Usha Kiran Khanji, who was actually a Padma Shri. Unfortunately, she's no more. So it began with her encouragement, to actually type the books out, as the books were actually so parched, because it came out published in 1957. So at that point of time, the book was absolutely crumbling. The moment I would open the page, it would just kind of go into 3-4 pieces actually. So for me to sit down and type those poems out was in itself a journey of love, a journey of a tribute to her. So that is where it started. And then the publisher himself, Aurobindo Ganga, was the person who has published the book, written the most brilliant foreword for the book, and encouraged throughout to translate, a task which I thought would be impossible. But I think at the end, as I say, every word I write, every thought that emanates, it comes from the grace of my Guru and the love of my husband, Ajit, who was a constant source of inspiration, encouragement, and what should I say, love personified. And my beautiful children and grandchildren, who are my support, who are my life's breath. And some of the family is not here, but each and every one is precious, and each and every one is included in this journey which has come together today. Thank you so much.
Beautifully presented, and I must say, I think all of us here have close to tears in our eyes. So, moving along a little bit, what I gathered very clearly is your mother was an extraordinary human being. Not just in her capacity to be able to write poetry. And she was born in?
She was born in 1926.
26. So, in a
small village called Sinha, which was in Gaya district.
Yes. So what I think immediately sort of jumps out at the reader, and I will get you to read this immediately after we have a small discussion. When did you first get acquainted with her poems? When you decided, okay, let's have a good look and see if I can translate them. Is that the time that...
When this book actually was published, I think I was about 12 years old or so. And the only thing I knew was that my parents, and my mother, was a fabulous writer. But the nuances of what she wrote, and I don't even know that I even read them, with any kind of appreciation, because I felt it was really beyond my understanding at that point. So many years later, when I was in my 40s, I tried to translate some of her poems, and as always, not ever satisfied with whatever I did. So I thought that it would be an impossible feat to endeavor. So I left it at that stage. And much later in life, when I started reading her poems, and I realized, her poetry was absolutely par excellence. And I have yet to come across her writings as, it spanned, I think, I think it has a timelessness to it. It definitely transcended time because as she wrote, what she wrote, and I think she touched almost every subject possible. So, and I feel every subject that she touched is still as relevant today as it is, was in her times. And I think her life was kind of guided by my father, who was much, much ahead of his times. So it was, I think, his encouragement, as she always said, that she was entirely his creation. But I think she was an absolute river of creativity, and within her that river flowed continuously. I think what my father, Dr. Narmadeshwar Prasad, did was just evoke that, that little chasm somewhere. And then it just kind of flooded like an ocean, which from where there was no coming back.
Wonderful, wonderful. So to follow on that, why to me, who's a feminist theorist, who believes that even in that act of kindness, of giving her the space, pushing her to write, that is still patriarchal, because that is still controlling her creativity. But it's good control, like they say, it's good grease in some restaurants. So taking the point of her being unusual in her thinking as well, I want you to first, you'll be hearing a lot of my voice. So I think it'd be nice if you can just read out, I marked it for you, the poem called Imprint. I want you to read it out because this was written long before someone as famous as Michael Ondaatje, who wrote The English Patient, and it was transcribed and it was scripted and made into a, multi-Oscar winning film. I want you to listen. And this is what we do at our literary circles. It's not just, each one gives a presentation. We try with you to unpackage the work that has been created with so much love or passion. Read it, then I will request Anasuya to read one piece of poetry that Michael Ondaatje wrote in his famous book, The Cinnamon Peeler. So it's very contextual with each other. It speaks to each other. But one poem which is by Shantaji is by a woman long before her time. And one is by Michael Ondaatje, who also thinks in images. And then I'd like to throw it open for 2 minutes, and you come back and tell us why you think this is so important, that a woman is able to voice her passion and her love in the way your mother has. Go ahead.
So would you like me to read the Hindi?
No. Oh, yeah, but why not? Hindi and English might be interesting.
तन की छाप छोड़ जाओ मुझ पर, ओ प्रवासी भटको जी भर प्रदेश में, मेरे मन में न लौटो। देखो मैं भी क्या चीज़ हूँ, ज़माने के देखने के काबिल, खंडहर हूँ और निर्माण भी, बाग हूँ और बियाबान भी, रोशनी हूँ और अंधकार भी। यह मेरा देश है भरा भरा फिर भी अकेला, देखता है हर रोज़ सपने विहान के। ओ प्रवासी भटको जी भर कर प्रदेश में, मेरे मन को पता नहीं क्या हुआ है। यह रेस्तरां आँखों की खोली है मैंने तुम्हारे लिए, घड़ी भर यहाँ बैठो, नाता जोड़ो, मैं तुम्हारा मनोरंजन करूँगी अपनी बनाई हुई शराब से। आज मुख्य मेहमान तुम, रात के इस फ्लोर शो में, एक बार, बस एक बार अपने तन की छाप छोड़ जाओ मुझ पर। यह देश मेरा अगर न तुम्हारा हुआ, कैसे काटोगे दिन वह प्रवास के। ओ प्रवासी, भटको जी भर प्रदेश में, मेरे मन के न लौटो. So, before I even begin, I would like to say that I have just tried to give you a little glimpse, a little peek into what she wrote, because this I don't know how much, or even an iota of justice that I've been able to do for the poem, but I have been as detached as I could be and stayed as close to her own writings, translated the imagery, much lost when the translation happens in any language, I would say. But it's just for you to get a glimpse of the subtleties that in her poems and the nuances are perhaps, lost somewhere, but just a hint of her writing. Leave the imprint of your body on me. O wanderer, roam as much as you want in your land, but do not return to my heart. See what I am, worthy of the world's gaze, a ruin and a creation, a garden and a wilderness, light and darkness too. This is my land, completely full, yet lonely. Watching the dreams of dawn every day, O wanderer, roam as much as you want in your land, but do not return to my heart. I don't know what has happened to my mind. This restaurant of my eyes I have opened for you. Sit here for a while, connect. I'll entertain you with the wine I've made. Today you are the main guest in this floor show of the night. Once, just once, leave the imprint of your body on mine. This land is my land, if not yours. How will you spend the days in this land? O wanderer, roam as much as you want in the land, but do not return to my heart. I would just like to say that how we interpret, how we discern according to our own perspectives, and how we, there are so many myriad interpretations. And the other day, as we were reading together in this wonderful group, and I think Anju pointed out something which was so wonderful, and it got me thinking, because it had not crossed my mind, to be very honest. And I took it as just ek baar chhod jao. The yearning, which was supposed to be just once to leave the impressions of his body on her. But so I thought, Lord Jao after that, because for her, that itself, that yearning, that one impression was one with which she could just continue. But I think Anju brought the most beautiful interpretations here by saying that na lotto. So she sees a comma over there, and I think it was so. Yes. But that got me thinking, and I thought that was a completely different interpretation. But I think it brought out perhaps the nuances, perhaps, but I leave it as an abstract statement and an open statement so that for anybody to, have their take on this. And thank you so much. And thank you so much, Anju, for this.
Okay, Anna's going to read Anasuya's
Yeah, so there is.
Michael Ondaatje, who is a much more contemporary, with it kind of guy, writer, a poet. He's arm candy. He's such a good-looking man from Sri Lanka. He's 83, but he's got a huge following. See what you find similar.
The cinnamon peeler. If I were a cinnamon peeler, I would ride your bed and leave the yellow bark dust on your pillow. Your breasts and shoulders would reek. You could never walk through markets without the profession of my fingers floating over you. The blind would stumble certain of whom they approach, though you might bathe under rain gutters, monsoon. Here on the upper thigh, at this smooth pasture, neighbor to your hair or the crease that cuts your back, this ankle you will be known among strangers as the cinnamon peeler's wife. I could hardly glance at you before marriage, never touch you. Your keen nosed mother, your rough brothers, I buried my hands in saffron, disguised them over smoking tar, helped the honey gatherers. When we swam once, I touched you in the water, and our bodies remained free. You could hold me and be blind of smell. You climbed the bank and said, "This is how you touch other women?" The grass cutter's wife, the lime burner's daughter, and you searched your arms for the missing perfume and knew. What good is it to be the lime burner's daughter, left with no trace, as if not spoken to in the act of love, and if wounded without the pleasure of a scar? You touched your belly to my hands in the dry air and said, "I am the cinnamon peeler's wife. Smell me."
The connection, that all poets have with something which is so organic and so undeniable, indelible. So I'm just thinking, Shalini, thinking aloud, when you put these poems in Hindi after so many years to translation, how tempting was it for you? We've gone over this before, but for the audience, how tempting was it for you to cast your own shadow or make your own meaning and not stick exactly to the track that your mother had written?
Well, let me first confess that the background that I came from, for me, my mother was a very reticent, shy, very, very submissive in appearance, which made me sit and wonder if she would have the courage, if she would have the, at one point even thought the audacity, how would she how could she just write a poem like that? But I was amazed, and I think my admiration for her grew, and to realize she was a woman of immense stature, to be able to come out with a poem like that, a woman who would write, with uh, nothing, no shyness about it, nothing. She was kind of so openly raw about it. So that was something which caught me by surprise. But then again, from the moment that I tried to translate it, I actually had kind of divorced myself as being her daughter, and just nothing subjective, just very, very detached from that. And I know there was no temptation whatsoever to, infuse it, to imbue it with my own essence whatsoever. Not at all. So I have tried that. But yes, it's only to a certain point that you can be objective and detached. Because then, you're a person different. And though she was my mother and the way I knew her, and this was an absolute revelation of sorts, but I have tried to uh, let her poem come out and emerge and blossom as who she was, also apart from the other impressions I had of her. So thank you for this lovely question, Julie.
Shalini, you have traveled the world. You actually have a diploma from the New York, was it Academy of Theatrical Arts. Uh, you have, spread yourself right across the globe doing many things. Do you think the fact that you're a painter and a singer and a dramatic artist, all that has somehow spoken to this first book of poems that you've translated?
I think it has in some ways, in the sense that as you there are some things within you that emerges that I have always felt. There are some things which you want to lend your voice to, some things which you want to, express in colors. So whatever that you do, in some ways you evolve into becoming that person that you are right now. And I guess all of that is an amalgamation of some sorts. As I said earlier, it is impossible to be not bringing your essence completely. But as I say again, perhaps yes, perhaps in some ways, it is again, like as I come, though she was my mother and I was close to her, but yes, I don't think perhaps it is a culmination of all of that put together in some ways.
Right. One is never sure whether one should ask this question. But do you know, when you talk about colors, and your metaphors are always very vivid. And I'm thinking of when you talk about sunset. You were going to talk about that, right? Kali was going to talk about it. Okay, so the light breaks egg yolks of the sea. It's incredible. You have a picture of the fried egg with the yolk in the middle, and you liken that to a sunset. Now, before Shalini gets on to explain that, Anju, what was your question and your analysis?
Thank you so much.
Don't mind reading the poem.
Not at all. First of all, thank you, Shalini, for giving us an insight into the beginning of the book, the working and the starting of the book, which was so beautifully explained by you. And I mean, it's really an amazing story. It's like bridging the gap by a daughter for the mother in two different eras, getting one era onto the other era. And it's not an easy job. It is a very fine and a delicate balance, between two different times, and which requires a lot of linguistic correctness and, like, what do I say? A poetic sensibility also. It is very important. Having said that, to translate Hindi into English also takes into consideration the fact that our emotions in Hindi are deeply embedded in the Hindi language. It's very tough to have them translated into English for an English audience. It's not very easy, but then you've done a great job, a fabulous job. Another thing which I noticed is the kind of metaphoric usage. It is brilliant. I mean, the egg yolks, I can only see the brightness of the yellow of an egg, and it really makes me hungry, The yellow yolk of the egg is so beautiful to look at every morning, I mean, and one tends to salivate a little bit and dances on the plate for a while, which is also very true.
Very realistic.
It's very realistic, and it's a very powerful imagery. It's tempting, it's inviting, So, would you like to read it, the Hindi or the English?
I think English would be nice because you read one in Hindi well. Yeah. And if I might suggest, Anju, did you also, or Anasya, did you also notice that word April? Yeah. It was so brilliant.
See, may I read two passage? Stanzas in Hindi, because I like reading Hindi. सांझ बनाने को ऑमलेट फोड़ती है सूरज के अंडे को आसमान की तश्तरी पर. This is really amazing. So the sky is a plate, Suraj is an egg, and the evening is breaking the egg onto the asman. बादल की टुकड़ियों से सफेद छिलके So the eggshells are like scattered clouds in the sky. Yaha waha jate hai bikhar, they get scattered. Pila pila hissa, the tempting part. Thirakta rehta hai tashtari mein. How beautifully explained. Yes. Thirakta rehta, because it's a little wobbly, the egg yolk. It is indeed, yeah. It is not like a solid, it's a little wobbly. थिरकता रहता है तश्तरी में थोड़ी देर तक, फिर आती है सांझ, एप्रन कमर में बांध, करती है फ्राई अंधेरा होने के कंबल. It is really good. I don't know how to express. I mean, going back into two different eras and having it expressed in a way which even the poets of today, in fact, I remember this very famous poet of mine, Piyush Joshi. You all must have listened to him. He's a singer, he's a lyricist, he's a poet, he's a theatre person. So it reminds me of the line that he'd composed, एक बगल में चांद होगा, एक बगल में रोटियां. So his metaphors are moon and roti. You know, so, and this is today. Your mom has written it many, many, many years ago. So, hats off.
In fact, having heard the word roti, there was a poem which had the lady who goes to the kitchen dressed up and then she buys the fabric of roti. Yes, that was also so amazing. Yes, you know, basically what I noticed was while, yes, 1926 was when she was born and she would have written these poems maybe while she was in her 20s or in her 30s. Yes. And we are looking at it in the timeline of today and thinking, oh, she in those times. But the mind is so unbound. And she had her own world within her mind. And it was not necessarily that you have to trap it in the timeline of the time that she existed in. Because, there was so much modernism in the way she expressed herself. A little bit of, remember that song? I'm sure all of you remember Strawberries, Cherries, and Angels Kissing Spring, My Summer Wine. And that summer wine is what she was offering in the restaurant of her eyes to the gentleman and saying, leave your imprint on me. So you can see there are so many landscapes that can be brought in a poem. A bit of erotica also. Yeah, there is erotica, unabashed. And I like the courage and the guts with which she just threw it out into the space, because all people who are creative are also limited with how much of their creativity they can expose to the world. Is the world ready to take it? And to hell with it. Be you. And I think that is something she did with great elan over here. Yes, very nice. I'm going to just pause here 1 minute. And during the reading of her memories of her own life, what occurred to me was that one point where
Your father, who was at Columbia or at Harvard, where he went for a Fulbright?
He's at Columbia.
Columbia. So just after she got pregnant, he had to go away. That must have been very hard. As she says, she pined for him every single day. So when you see that story of being solitary, being alone in a house full of people, but who were very different from her husband or her kind of thinking, did she ever speak about her early married life to you?
She often, all the stories and in the preface, as I write and I wrote in her memoirs earlier, were actually recollections of what she would speak to me about, somewhat, not in details, but snippets here and there, which I would kind of put together. And yes, she came from a family of writers too. And she came from a family where her mother was a writer, her mother was a singer. So she was also very creative in her own right. And also she laid great stress on education. Whereas she got married into this family where women were not really educated so much. And that she had completed her matriculation when she got married. And she came into this household where the women had not really kind of gone to any school of sorts. And their life revolved around the house and cooking and all those kind of things. Whereas she, from there, was completely, out of her own comfort zone, where things were very tradition bound, you know, an era where girls were not that important as the boys were, as the men were. Being dark, and she herself was dark, so being dark was like another very disqualification in her life. So she basically was literally a fish out of water. In that kind of an environment, though she writes in many of her poems, as I read earlier, that she was in a house with many people and her life was full in terms of a household, in terms of a family. But somewhere she had that void, somewhere she had that loneliness, somewhere, there was nobody else to communicate with. And in 1948, when he was 47, 48, when he was in Columbia University, that was a time, which was when I think, she was pregnant. And then there was no communication. It was not the age where you had videos, mobile phones. Letters took 3 weeks to reach. So there was absolute kind of a disconnect, I would say, communication-wise. So she was basically all through her pregnancy mostly by herself. So I think that melancholy streak, which was already there because she had lost her father at the age of 13. So all that, was actually contributed to her being extra sensitive in nature, and also, hypersensitive, I would say, very vulnerable, I would say. So, but the thing is, that's what, she projected. But deep within, she had such deep courage. And she was actually quite an inspiration to begin with. And would you like me to read this, Julie? Sunset. Twilight breaks the egg yolks of the sun to make an omelette on the plate of the sky. The white egg shells of the cloud like scattered hither and thither. The yellow yolk of the egg dances on the plate for a while. Then the evening arrives with an apron tied to her hips to fry the egg before the dark blanketed the evening. Thank you. This poem, if I can take a moment to tell you, was a poem when her book was published in 1957. This was one of the books which was poems which was specially picked out because that was an era where Mahadevi Verma was writing things like nature, Main Neer Bhari Dukh Ki Badli, and all those Chayavadi poets like Shankar Prasad and all those, that era, that aspect of nature. But she, I think, saw so much else to that. And I think her mind traversed in so many other dimensions. And you were left wondering always, how did her mind travel there? How would she? I mean, it was like, an idea and an ideology unheard of, unthought of. At least you may not have thought about it. So this particular poem was a poem which was always picked out. And I think it is her, one thing in her writings is that her poetry was so visual. It was graphic, vivid. It was almost like when you read it and when you delve into its many, many subtle layers and you read it, it also at times you feel like you were watching that entire scene where you are present there. And the entire ambience of this place just comes to you and you are living there. I mean, and don't forget that she wrote it in her times, where imagery like this was completely unheard of, new, as you said, modernistic. So that was one thing which was very, very controversial about this poem of hers.
I was wondering what you would say, and if Anna and Anju have thought of. There are so many echoes of Rabindranath Tagore. Was she interested in Tagore? Must have been.
Well, I don't think she ever mentioned anything about Tagore, or maybe it was that, we took her writing as just as a matter of fact because, it was there.
Yeah.
So we never really delved into what she really, her thought processes and things like that. As I say, that book has, like opened out a whole new horizon, a vista which I was unaware of. But yes, her novel called Sari Raat Hawa was actually compared to Rabindranath Tagore's writings.
Because actually going into the poems, a weary Phalguni evening, right? And then she talks about love bhari Phalgun, Phalgun degeche boni boni. That is so much. I was thinking honestly today because that is so visual, right? Dale dale phule bhole, pataye pataye re, Phalgun degeche boni boni. This is almost like she had visualized the whole event of Phalgun Mash's March April, and that's where you have the red Palash Puri, and it seems as if the entire forests are burning. So there is also another place, the word Phaguni, the mad west wind which comes with heat, is in the poems. She was also very nature oriented, wasn't she?
She was also very psychology oriented.
See, she was a professor of psychology, and her reference, as you see throughout the poems, the moon plays a very significant part. In every second, third poem, she's talking about the moon. The moon, in any case, is a representation of the mind. So I think the poems, her writings, seem so innocent and so superficial when you read them. But when you delve further into it, they and further into the layers of her words, I think each word has so many connotations to it. And the more you delve into it, you realize that her poems are so deeply profound. Because she speaks much more than what meets the eye. Let's put it this way. So.
From the background that you had told us of your early youth and your parents and their life, you did say that your father knew Bob Dylan and other Joan Baez and the other poets of that time in the U.S. And when I read her poetry, supposing I were not to know that it was a translation, you do get a feel a bit of Leonard Cohen's kind of writing, and you do sense it, because if you think of the lyrics of those songs and you see the way she has written her poems, is it possible also that her exposure to your father's social connect could have also introduced her to this kind of very non-conventional writing, more a westernized approach to giving words to your creativity? It's not so Indian.
Funny you should say that because Leonard Cohen's lyric in one particular poem, which is now doing the rounds of social media, you guys might know. Hello there. Let the wound be, because that's where the light comes in. Your assertions of light, your mom's assertions of light, right throughout the books, has another dimension. Yes. Of pushing you despite all the darkness. Yes. Where you talk about, I've just written down, scribbled, all the walls of my room where you shut all the doors, again to go like. When he is unhappy, he is shutting all the doors. When he is happy, he is opening all the windows.
Yes.
So, let the light come in. That whole idea of the juxtaposition of light and dark, but the light always seems to give you a bit of hope, a glimmer of
Yes.
hope.
Always.
And also, you remember when we were discussing the use of lightning and the way she described the thunder as the barking of dogs. All of that was it was very unique, the way she expressed it. It didn't, supposing I were not to see it as translated works, it could be fitted in any time, anywhere. It's a very non-specific in its timeline. It's always relevant, always applicable, and it articulates so easily.
I'm just going to call on Pranita. Pranita, what did you think so far of the metaphors we've been talking about?
Ma'am, just this thing, the concept of light. So, though I have not been lucky enough to read the book yet, and I'll be looking forward to reading it, but I read a poem by her, by Shalini ma'am. It's called Times of Strife. And in that poem, it begins on a very dark note, very real and relatable, the present scenario, today's times. But then it ends on the concept of light. There is optimism, there's buoyancy, and you have the Satyug coming in, new awakening, phoenixes. So whatever we are discussing about inner dialogues, I find very much in many poems that she has written herself. And another one that I came across was Mother Mine, a poem again by Shalini ma'am. And it's another one which stayed with me. And here in this, particularly in this book, she's talking about her mom. And there she's talking about the mother being the sculptor. How she's really shaping the individual. And as if there are those hapless lives of despair. And then the mother is shaping, slowly shaping. There's a journey that's being talked about. Then you have the image of the pebble. And the pebble slowly gets, if I'm not wrong, becomes a speck of dust. And then finally it wants to meet your river and merge into your ocean. So the merging to emerge. That's something that stayed with me. It was beautiful. And because we were discussing her mother today, I thought I had to speak about this today. Thank you so much, ma'am.
But shall we just wait for 1 minute? I would like Anju after you. If Anju will give her versions of the poems that she's chosen, or what you'd like to talk about.
I was fascinated with the 63's page. Light and city, there's another dust. So I realized there is a kind of a recurrence between images and metaphors, in her poems. It's mainly darkness which leads to a glow and a light. There is the darkness of the clouds, the darkness of the sky, and suddenly leading to some kind of a light and glow which emerges from somewhere, like you said, emergence of positivity, which I read. And there is a frequent mention of moon, sun, stars, sky. So the bed cover, the sky as a bed cover, which I thought was a very sweet metaphor, because I've lost that poem. I don't know where it is. Night and sky and dusk. What is it? Adjali Sanj.
It's Adjali Sanj.
Adjali Sanj, which is half burnt dusk. So that was very interesting because there she is writing about the evening which is emitting smoke. You know, as the dusk approaches, it leaves out a kind of a ring of smoke, which I thought would mean that the day is tired, it's exhausted, and it's letting out a kind of a sigh of, you know, exhaustion and ready to be restful. Like I said, from darkness to relief and healing. And now it's trying to rest in great comfort. Similarly, the ailing sun, sorry, Bimar Suraj. It's no, that is done now. Yeah, there is a. Yeah, please read it.
बीमार सूरज पी रहा लाल लाल मिक्सचर गिरता है उसके होठों से जो आसमान के नीले बेड कवर पर उखड़ी उखड़ी किरणों की सांस डूब रही है करती है सांझ तैयार देने को उसकी गर्म बाहों में मॉर्फिया का इंजेक्शन खड़ी थी क्षितिज नस खामोश सिरहाने फैल रही है इधर उधर इथर दूर सांझ के लिबास अब बैठ मस्त चांद तारों की कुर्सी पर पीता है सांझ की अर्धशली सिगरेट को अंगड़ाई चांदनी because it's night so an advancing night नापेगी रात बिस्तर का हर दरवाजे पर लगेगा रोशनी का इश्तहार घर की रानी कर 16 श्रृंगार जाएगी रसोई की नुमाइश में खरीदने रोटियों के कपड़े चूल्हे की दुकान
I can never, really say more than super because every single poem where she invokes dusk or the time of eating or the time of breaking bread, she's got culinary skills. You know, some way or the other, they are food oriented. It is so wonderful.
Now here the sun is feeling down. It's got an illness, you know, and it's having that lal lal mixture. So the sun is feeling out means that it's got some kind of a cosmic illness, which will become okay with the lal lal mixture. So as the sun rises, it becomes okay, and finally by the end of it, there is the glow of the setting sun falling on the blue bed cover. Isn't that beautiful? So as the sun sets, as the ill sun is finally going off to sleep, the glow of the fading sun, which is beautiful to look at, falls on the blue bed cover, which is the sky. So I thought this was a wonderful imagery.
And that all decked up will go to the exhibits in the kitchen to buy fabrics of bread and the stove. This is so sweet. I think it is really quite phenomenal. Yeah. Very unconventional. Very unconventional.
I would say very out of the box thinking. So if I go back to your question earlier about Bob Dylan and Allen Ginsberg and all these various people whom my father knew, but we went to the US, she went to the US, and when he became friendly with those people, because my father himself was a poet, but that exposure she didn't have when she was writing the book. She went in 1966, which was much, much later. So these imagery is her own imagination. You know, like her imagination was so vivid and just so unconventional. And literally, but she wrote about all of this before she had even, my father was friendly with them in those eras, you know, the 60s, where those people, not Joan Baez, but Bob Dylan, but all of these people, you know, were for an era of the 60s, you know, late 60s. So she was in no way conversant, you know, with their poetry. So this is her own kind of take and creativity. That's what I felt, you know. Nature for her donned a very different apparel. Let's put it this way.
And at the time when there was no internet, there was no
bringing a lot of ideas from various parts of the world. Yes, like you have today. Yes, so it's very organic to her.
It is indeed. But I guess I feel that everything is out there in the atmosphere and it is in the universe, and perhaps in some particular point of time it filters to you. And you just get that spark of brilliance where it opens up something for you.
It is a little amazing because the styles have so much similarity, yet there's no way in
Connect.
which they could have connected.
That's right. That's right.
Shalini, I want to go back to the question of translation, the problems of translation. I think all that we've heard is that there's a sutra that runs through a poet's work. And in your poetry, I find the sutra, a lot of it is visual imagery. You know what I mean? At any point, do you think your mother ever talked to you or shared stories, or was she ever painting, or was she ever drawing? Can you tell us a little bit? I think what awakens in us through your translation is actually to draw a picture of her and what she was like. So we are getting there. It's in bits and pieces. But I'm interested to know, was she ever an artist? Was she trained? Was it a very organic, normal thing for her?
She really had no formal training as like in painting or as an artist. But I think that creative streak that is within you, I think it expresses itself in many different colors and many different fragrances. And so, yes, she would do paintings, like we would all get together and then we would all, as children, also, go painting tins, tiles, whatever we laid our hands upon. But if that, would say that yes, she did paint, but however she could express herself in her paintings. That's why I feel that there's her poems are so visual. Even when you read her short stories, and you feel that actually they are so cinematographic. You would feel that you are sitting through an actual a movie which is unfolding as you keep reading her stories. So I think she had a special gift to do that. And I think she would paint. So I think there are many visuals in her poems which come from that, those nuances, they come from within her own personality and from her own creativity. Because she had a richness to her mind, to her creativity, which comes out here. Perhaps, like sometimes if you paint, you'd like to, as I said, you want to give color to your expressions, yes, which you are unable to do with your writing. Writing becomes a little bit of a confinement unless you are brilliant at writing. But the colors become then again more visual, so then you do that. So I think I think it's wedded within her, for her to express in these different arenas.
Will you do us the honor of reading a poem and talking about it? And did any of the grandchildren take the cue from grandma and write poetry?
Well, Ashreya does write. She says that I was 16, but I was very impressed by her writing, and I keep encouraging her to continue to write because I know there's a lot of potential. So Ashreya is also a dancer. So she has that creativity in her to do that. I think my other granddaughter, Ashka, she also doesn't write poetry, but I think her prose is absolutely wonderful. And Sandeep's son, Pranay, I think he himself, from the age of 9, started writing short anecdotes. He has a travel blog which he writes. And I think that creativity just kind of runs into all of the grandchildren. Ashka is here. So No, it hasn't really skipped the generation, but perhaps some point of time. I thought all of my children would be writers, and I think they do write well. But I don't know at what point of time it will emerge.
Writers will learn about them later. They start anytime, right? Yeah. But really, I'd love to have her say a few words.
I think Ashria. Yes. I think instead of reciting another poem, I think I'd just like to make a comment instead of all that we've been talking about. I think one big thing that I noticed from my great grandmother and then my grandmother and henceforth is the playfulness in her writing. And when we talk about like it is timeless, the timelessness of her writing, I think it is still very embedded in her positionality as a woman when we talk about either her gastronomic imagery or her domestic imagery, fabric and so forth. So I think it's the rewriting and like rescripting of those mundane objects that she encountered throughout. So even with, for example, the first poem that we read, talking about the body and how she has this playfulness, with female erotica and sensuality, there is a rescripting of the body and reworking for them to be assertive about it, that it is my land that you are visiting and then you will go forth. And I liked your interpretation of that too. So I think just that reimagining and rescripting to be empowering then is something that I find absolutely phenomenal in her writing and your translations as well. And I think the books in general are just, I think, talk about the labor, love, and liberation of the women that come before you and the ones that are coming after. So I think that's just like absolutely phenomenal, even the labor and love you put into this writing. And I'm very grateful to be here and to hear all of you together talking about my great-grandmother and my grandmother's work. But yeah, that's all.
You're proof positive. Something good is happening to us.
I think this, is a moment apt to celebrate. And I'm absolutely actually lost in wonderment, I would say, to listen to her interpretations, to think my mother, I mean, this is her great granddaughter trying to interpret her poetry. Itself is absolutely marvelous, And what more tribute can you give to her your great grandmother? So this itself makes me feel absolutely elated that there is a legacy that will be there for them to realize their great grandmother, who she was, whom they really don't have. I don't think so. Ashriya met all these my grandchildren. I have not really met her, but they will someday get to know about her through the inner dialogues. Yes, you know me. Yes, but
So go to it. What are you waiting for? And your daughters are not off the hook. As far as I'm concerned. The daughters have to say their piece and the son. Yes. So let's have the mic all around and then maybe members of the audience. I'm waiting for Lata and Promita to come back again. Come up, please.
So I think this reading is interesting because I knew her the same way I think my mother knew her, where she was shy. I think, you know, um, she was more of, she was busy with the business of living, surviving after the death of her husband and kind of keeping the family afloat and things like that. And so listening to the poetry before and listening to the story, the first poem that she read, it was getting to see her in a different light, which is kind of interesting. And I think from my mind, we're all in the business of trying to kind of make ends meet and to kind of provide for your family, and you get very busy in that, and you kind of lose the appreciation of the arts, lose sort of valuing and reevaluating things and getting a different perspective, So it's interesting to kind of go back and think about it and also look at it. It's amazing that she wrote it in 1950s, and India in 1950s was very different. Um, it's absolutely, yeah, it's very different. So um, I think it's an incentive for me to go and read more of her work.
Um, I first want to thank everybody for being here. Julie Auntie, thank you for doing this, to Anju Auntie and to Anusia for doing it, and for my mother, of course, the author. I think I read snippets of the inner dialogues, and as Sandeep said, I really rediscovered my grandmother. I've known her to be very shy and reserved. And I feel there was a dichotomy in that, where she was so shy and yet her intellect was par excellence. Her writing was something I've marveled at. And as I hear each and every one of her poems the other day when I was with you and all of you all, it was so wonderful to see it being analyzed and interpreted in ways that we would have never known. And also to bring it to light, because sometimes I take it for granted. She's my grandmother, okay, you know what, I'll read it whenever. But I'm so amazed in the way that she was so ahead of her time, and such a progressive woman. And truly, I feel proud to be her granddaughter. And I wish I could carry a bit of that legacy. It was truly a timeless, event. So, thank you so much.
Okay, I'll go first. So yeah, a few seats. Yeah. So like my image of my grandmother was sitting. Oh, I'm Anvita or Anu. My image of my grandmother was her always sitting by like a windowsill, looking out into the streets. She was always, I think, in solitude and contemplation. I wouldn't think of her as happy. But then, when she talked about her being playful, that's never the image I ever had of her. But it's nice to see that it came out in ways, it came out in some way, even if we didn't notice it. Yeah.
You've been talking about light a lot, as has Anusia and myself. But there's one poem that I was reading just before I came on depression. She was a psychologist. Yes, loneliness. And she says, it can accommodate both of us. Yes. This was in the sorry. So the way you saw her, actually, yeah. And after you read the poems,
Is a very different or different sides of her that we didn't notice. I think also we were children where we didn't look at, as an adult, you look at people differently, you understand them differently. She didn't ever seem to me as playful, or she didn't sort of engage with us as much. But I never saw this side of her, and I'm glad she had that. But she was very unconventional, and probably circumstances forced her to be that way, like being a widow so young and then teaching and raising her family, and that was commendable. And I've always appreciated her for that. But this is absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Ashesha, and see, the image that I have of my grandmother is that, she was, as Anu had put it very rightly, that she was very quiet, reticent, and reserved. And I would say, I think, a little melancholy, because that was the time that, she was very sick. As we got to see her and spend time with her, we were like, much older, and then she was pretty sick. But I always respected her. She was a very powerful woman, even in the quietude, because I've seen her. She was a lady, who had a lot of difficulties in life, like she had a big family and things. And through her writing, she expressed that innate power, the dignity that, she lived by, even right till the end. And, as Anu also said it, that we didn't really see that playful side of her, the way she could express. And I would say that for a woman from her time, she was far ahead. a woman which is an inspiration to not only her family but to all of us. And I would just end with that, saying that I hope someday that we can, live up to her legacy and honor and become a part of a woman that she was, so far ahead, so inspirational to everyone who reads her book and everyone who knows her. And of course, what we know of my grandmother is a lot for my mother, and she's a real inspiration to me as well. Thank you.
Would you like to say a few words? Okay. So, should we pass it to the back there? And please tell us what you took away from it. Yes, and then.
I'm a friend of Shalini's. My name is Rita. I didn't know her mother at all. I just met her once in Shalini's house a very long time ago. And to me, she was, as everyone says, very shy, modest, humble sort of a person. And one could never imagine that she had such a depth of passion and sensuality in her. And with touched, of course, tinged with that mischievous tint in her poems, which is wonderful. It's like seeing a bud blossoming into a rose, So in her books, that she could express herself so well. So I'm really looking forward to reading this book now.
Lantaji, please, what did you take away from this message? It's good to see. Yes, of course. The legacy. Just thinking about all the conversations. I don't know anyone, so but I can visualize. Romita, anything?
I just thought that a writer has a different world of her own. So maybe she was very different as a person, the person that her children and her grandchildren saw. And in her mind, she's a totally different person, a person who is totally evolved, expanded, and we can just see those vignettes of her, those little pieces, slices. So maybe through her work, we see her a truer form than as the individual that she was.
Thank you. Could you pass it to the lady in orange? I have something to say. Okay. So then whoever wants to say a few words. Gentlemen. So
Shalini, I think we don't want to squeeze the lemon too much. So, with a toss of that lemon, shall we say that au revoir, we will see you again. And from Anju and from Anu and from Harish, who could not be here today, sends his apologies. He's down with I don't know what, which everybody's getting. But we will organize a translator's afternoon one day. We have thought about it because we have now several people who are coming forth publishing. So we will definitely invite you. It's been an honor to meet your children, the exceptional children and your grandchildren, I must say.
let's have a round of applause. Thank you.
So thank you very much, everyone, for coming, and it's been just wonderful having you. Sometimes I think a small gathering and an incisive discussion leaves more riches in the mind than, a big book launch with many people here. So we never invite people specifically, but it's people like Promita, people like Lata Bajoria, who come and make it special because they believe in literature and they want to hear genuinely. So thank you all for coming.